He opened his eyes and looked about the room. Light from the door, the only illumination. He let his eyes wander over the items in the room, strange things that he did not know the use of. Above his head, he saw a screen with strange writing scrolling across it. He had no idea how long he had been there, nor did he know where he even was. All he knew was that he'd been taken there a long, long time before, that he was lying in a bed of sorts and that he was thirsty, so very thirsty. His mouth was dry and his tongue feeling sticky and swollen. His lips dry and in danger of cracking. Feeling a need to move, he felt resistance in his wrists. His arms were bound to the bed. His heart rate accelerating a bit as fear washed over him, and he began struggling against the restraints. Sounds and movement in the doorway distracted him momentarily, his fear growing as the sounds came closer. Closing his eyes against the pain as a sudden bright light pierced his eyes. Opening them again, he recoiled in fear from the sight before him. Two creatures had come into the room and were approaching him. Even if forced, he could not begin to describe the horror that was these two creatures. They flanked him and looked down on him. One seemed to be the leader, as it was trying to communicate, some incomprehensible gibberish spewing from what could have been called a mouth only in the most generous sense of the word. The creatures then pulled the covers from him, leaving him only covered in a very thin cloth. He began struggling again, whimpering in fear. What were they going to do to him now? The creatures moved him around, turning him this way and that. They released the things holding his arms, tied down, and he began fighting against them. The lead creature was apparently upset and was chastising him, the voice sharp. He soon gave up trying to fight his captors, not because he feared angering them, but because of the fatigue that overcame him. He lay there, shocked and defeated, stunned at the weakness in his body. He was sure that he had once been a strong man. The creature stripped him and began rubbing a strange wet substance over his body. Finally, they finished manipulating him, leaving him in a different position than before, again covered in the cloth and a fabric covering. One creature moved away and returned with a package. It spoke again to him, and then pushed something into his mouth. The texture, slightly rough, but moist. At first, relief washed over him, as his parched mouth was wet, but then a stinging sensation and a strange taste hit him. He turned his head away as he sunk even deeper into despair. He closed his eyes, trying to shut out the world that was now his hell, and heard the creatures leaving the room, chattering to each other. Outside the room. Thanks, Cam. Let me know when you need help with your baths, Jan said, looking at her friend and co-worker. Glancing back, looking sadly into the room they'd just left, Cam nodded and then stopped. What's wrong, Jan? Jan shook her head. I don't know. Did you see his eyes? The way he looked at us? She looks back at the patient. He looked terrified. Cam nods again, also looking into the room. Yeah, I thought so too. He has dementia, yeah? Yes, he does. I wonder. Jan pauses, thinking. I know they lose their memory and all, but I just wonder. What if they lose the ability to recognize human faces too? Cam looks at Jan, horrified. Oh my God. What if they do? Jen picks up the thought. What does he think we are? What does he think we're doing to him? Both nurses shudder at the thought, looking sadly at the patient. Jen wonders out loud. What are we doing to him?